If you walk around in a Chinese city at night, you might come across something like this. Rows of people, mostly young and attractive, sitting or standing on the streets in front of rows of phones and ring lights, singing and talking and sometimes dancing. They look like streamers, but they also look homeless. Indeed, they do gather around places where homeless people tend to be. On the sidewalks, inside tunnels, on bridges or under bridges. There was even a bridge that became so famous for this type of gathering that people started going there just to watch the spectacle. There was so much foot traffic under the bridge that at one point it started to look like a local festival or block party. You can see people dressed up impeccably while dancing in the mud, or carrying a heavy jar of water while dancing in the mud, or downright rolling in the mud, or basically doing whatever it takes to get attention from viewers online. Now, if you're seeing this for the first time, you probably have a few commonly asked questions. What are they doing? Why are they doing that? Are they streaming? Are they homeless? Why are they streaming outside? Why can't they stream from home? Why are they all together like that? Why can't they just stream by themselves? Why do they seem so desperate? What's pushing them to go this far? Why is this happening? Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? The universe? Okay, I got you. In this video, I will talk about this phenomenon of homeless streaming in China. I'll talk about what it is and what caused it, and in so doing paint a cautionary tale of what can happen when the attention economy goes too far. Now, like these streamers, I too am a content creator, so I feel a personal connection to their struggle. You might not be a streamer or a content creator, and that's okay, because the lessons here are applicable across culture and geography, and can be useful regardless of your particular domains of human endeavor. So join me as we dive in to the rise of these homeless streamers. Now, first of all, yes, they are indeed streamers, but no, they're not homeless, or at least not usually. So why are they out there on the street in the middle of the night? Well, they come out at night because nighttime just happens to be a peak time for streaming traffic in China. Most people would have finished work at that point and are now online seeking entertainment. So nighttime naturally has the most streamed viewers, and streamers in turn get online at night to capitalize on that. Many streamers also have day jobs and would only have time to stream at night. In terms of why they do it on the street though, it's mostly because it makes for engaging content. You're probably seeing TikTok dancers do this, filming their content in public, sometimes to the annoyance of other people. TikTokers can and do film their content in private spaces, but there's something interesting about the real-world chaos, the cars and the cityscape and the social pressure of other people watching that can make the content more engaging to watch. And these Chinese streamers stream in public to capture some of that same engagement on their stream. Additionally, for some streamers, this is also an attempt to appeal to pity. The idea is that if viewers see them sitting out in the cold at 1 in the morning, they might feel empathy towards the streamers and as a result become nicer to them and donate to their stream more often. Now, I acknowledge that this looks kind of insane. In fact, when I first started researching this topic, I had to do a sanity check and contact a few people in China to make sure that they've actually seen this with their own eyes and this is not just AI-generated footage. And unfortunately, it is real. In fact, you can watch the stream from these streamers right now. You need to use a Chinese streaming platform, and here's me trying to do this a few weeks ago. I just searched for street streaming and found one after just a couple of scrolls. What was shocking to me was that I was watching this at 1:40 in the afternoon Pacific time, which would have been about 4, almost 5 o'clock in the morning in China. So this poor girl was on the street at basically 5 in the morning, while it was kind of raining and streaming for the 46 people who were watching the stream. So the question is, why are they going this far? And sure, streaming outside might make for slightly better content, but compared to the comfort of streaming from home, what's pushing these streamers to go out in the cold in the middle of the night? Now, first of all, there is a macroeconomic reason for this. After the COVID lockdown, China's economy has not rebounded as strongly as one would have hoped. The rate of unemployment is still relatively high, and even those with jobs might not necessarily be able to afford the cost of living in major cities. Streaming, on the other hand, has a low barrier to entry. Basically, anyone with a phone and an internet connection can do it. So naturally, streaming becomes something many Chinese people do to supplement their income. According to CCTV, there were more than 15 million professional streamers in China by the end of 2023. That means roughly 1 in every 100 people in China were streamers. In other words, the streaming industry has become incredibly competitive. It's therefore a necessity for streamers to go the extra mile, to stand out in a sea of people making similar content if they want to make money. Making the effort to come out to the street is just one such example. But there are other factors that exaggerates this sense of desperation in streamers and push them to work harder. One of these factors is baked directly into the mechanics of Chinese streaming platforms, and it has to do with how Chinese streamers get paid. Now, many streaming platforms in the West, like Twitch and YouTube, have ad revenue sharing programs. Once streamers are qualified and accepted into the program, even if their viewers don't pay them, the streamers can still get paid from ad revenue. Chinese streaming platforms, on the other hand, don't have ad revenue sharing, or at least not yet at this time. So streamers' income has to come from the pocket of the viewers. That usually happens in one of two ways. First is straight up viewer donation. Viewers can tip the streamers directly through these virtual gifts. This is one of the most common ways for street streamers to monetize. The second way is live commerce, and this is basically infomercial but on streams. Streamers would talk about the product, and there will be a button at the bottom of the screen for viewers to buy. When that happens, the streamer receives a commission from the sales. Now, regardless of how it happens, the fact remains that streamers don't get paid unless viewers take money out of their own pocket and give it to them in one way or another. This creates an incentive, if ever so subtly, for streamers to be a bit more desperate. They seem more needy because they do need something from their viewers. Because of this, there were memes circulating on Chinese social media that compares these street streamers to beggars. Here's one such meme, and the top here says old school beggars, and the bottom says new age beggars. Now I can see some resemblance, but to be fair, streamers do provide some form of entertainment. They do sing and dance and so on, so a better comparison might be to street performers rather than beggars. There's another thing that sets streamers apart from beggars, and that's the fact that many street streamers are often parts of a business or company that specializes in social media content creation. These companies are officially known as MCN, or multi-channel network, in the industry. They're basically streaming agencies or influencer agencies. They provide streamers with training, equipment, help them broker sponsor relationship, and with other logistical tasks in exchange for a cut of the streamer's revenue. Now, you might wonder why any influencer would want to give up a portion of their revenue to join an agency. You've got a smartphone and a data plan, so just point the camera at yourself and hit record, right? How hard could it be? Well, there are actually a lot of things content creators need to do that has little to do with creating the content itself. For instance, I just spent a week filing my taxes. Even though my channel was monetized for less than 2 months last year and made about $200, I still had to include that business activities on my tax filing, because there's apparently a difference between cash-based accounting and accrual-based accounting, and if you don't know what any of that means, I didn't either. So that's how I spent a week. Thank you for asking. Now, no offense to the accountants out there, this is fascinating stuff, but as a content creator, it's probably more efficient and relevant for me to spend a week researching for this video topic instead of learning how to depreciate a capital asset at fair market value. The idea of a company taking care of these kind of things for me sounds like a great value proposition in theory. But in practice, joining an agency, especially in China, usually means giving up on some degree of creative and career freedom. And depending on how ethical the agency you're working with is, you could be giving up on a lot of freedom to the point that you are trapped contractually. As part of joining an agency in China, streamers might face restrictions on what kind of content they can stream, where and when they have to stream, and quotas like how much revenue they must generate per week. And keep in mind that Chinese streamers don't make revenue until viewers give it to them. Failing to meet these quotas could result in fines. And if streamers try to leave the agency before their contract's completion, they could get sued. So it's easy to see how these restrictions can intensify desperation and push streamers to hustle ever more frantically to avoid breaching contract terms. For example, you might have seen clips like this circulating on the internet. People have called them influencer factories, and these would have been operated by influencer agencies. Not all of them look this bad though. There are some with better conditions, like this one based in Indonesia. But the business idea is the same. It's to streamline the content creation process, from training to filming to distribution, so that content can be mass manufactured like commodities in factories. And many of these street streaming gatherings are just the other side of the same coin. Now, some street streaming gatherings are formed organically from independent streamers, but we know that many are organized by agencies, because there are hints in the footage that reveal this. For example, here the streamers are all using the same ring lights and nearly identical setups. You can also sometimes see tech support staff assisting the streamers. There's even a continuous red carpet that are laid out on the ground sometimes, indicating that the team had come and set this up beforehand for their streamers as part of an organized business operation. Regardless of how these gatherings form, there is something off-putting about them. They look almost dystopian, like something out of a Black Mirror episode. One of the reasons it looks so jarring is because it juxtaposes a series of polar opposites that really shouldn't belong together. For instance, it juxtaposes the appearance of wealth and fame to poverty and obscurity. These streamers are all dressed in glamorous clothing, with beautiful makeups, in front of spotlights and cameras as if they are celebrities. Yet in reality, they are out on the street, like homeless beggars. It also juxtaposes human connections and loneliness. On one side, viewers from all around the country are connecting intimately with their favorite streamers, a modern miracle facilitated by the internet. On the other side, everyone is alone. Most viewers are probably in a room by themselves staring at a screen, while the streamers sit just inches apart from each other, yet never interact. Everyone is locked in the prison of their digital worlds, appearing to connect, yet never really do. It juxtaposes collectivism and individualism as well. China has a collectivist culture, after all. So by and large, people prioritize social cohesion and group well-being above their personal ambition. These street gatherings seem to trend towards this kind of collectivism. Everyone is sitting in front of the same equipment while doing the same things. It looks like they are one unit, working towards the common goal. But the reality is quite the opposite. It's hyper-individualistic. The streamers aren't working towards any sort of collective well-being. Rather, each streamer is out for themselves, climbing over each other to take a slice from a pie that is only so large. There are only so many viewers on the platform that night, each of them with only so much budget for tips. For one streamer to gain a viewer's attention and tip is for another to lose it. And this individualistic zero-sum competition leads to the last juxtaposition, the appearance of individuality and its complete erasure. The point of streaming is supposed to be genuine connection. It's a platform for streamers to show their authentic personality and uniqueness for their fans to connect with. And each streamer here appears to try to do that. They're all dressed up, enthusiastic, and entertaining. But in reality, they've lost their individuality in their very attempt to show it. The reality is that they're all doing the same things in front of the same gears. This process of mass production of content has turned content creation into a commodity, and each streamer is but one of many identical cogs in the content creation machine that churns out the same sort of MP4 files onto the influencer factory conveyor belt. Now, what's happened to the Chinese content creation industry is something I'll call rat-race-ification. That is not a real word, but I'm going to use it to refer to this process of transforming otherwise creative and productive pursuit into zero-sum hustle. Content creation was a cool thing initially. It was a venue for creatives to share their work, and people who resonated with them could start following them. It was sort of amateur and underground, and Asian parents had yet to agree that it was a real job. And then people started noticing how much money was in it and began to flood into the industry. There was enough financial reward there for some people to be willing to go to the extreme to win. Next thing you know, the whole endeavor became a zero-sum rat race, something that isn't so different from the traditional rat race, like working at a bad office job with an exploitative employer. So you can sit in your street cubicle and do streaming work the same way you sit in your office cubicle and do paperwork. Just a different flavor of soul-sucking, but your soul is getting sucked either way. This doesn't just happen in Chinese content creation, of course. In the West, for instance, you can find courses online that teach you how to churn out basically garbage content quickly or even in an automated fashion so that you can extract easy and fast income or even passive income on social media platforms. And this isn't limited to the content creation industry either. Rat-race-ification can and has happened to many industries. But personally, as a content creator, it is a shame for me to see the rat-race-ification of my industry in real time and its effect on people. Since I started making content, I've made many YouTuber friends who have since quit making videos. Many of them have come to content creation with one expectation, and when that expectation wasn't met, they soon burnt out. Now, this is just a personal theory of mine, but I think the rat race is a choice to some degree. I believe that it's possible to not participate in the rat race, even if the industry one is in is rat-racifying in real time. In other words, just because other people in my industry are rat racing out of control doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do it too. Now, I'm not giving career advice here, and I'm not saying what I'm doing is the only way, but just to use it as an example, I had a friend who asked me this once. He said, Louis, look at these big YouTube channels like Mr. Beast, right? They have much bigger budgets and teams of professional writers and editors. All you have is a camera and a keyboard, so how can you possibly compete? Now, this is just my take on it, but I don't think I am competing with Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast makes great content, but the content he makes looks nothing like the content I make. In fact, the only commonality between our content seems to be that we're both breathing while filming and maybe speaking in English. I'm looking for something more specific. I'm looking to create content that falls in the intersection between what I love making, what I'm good at making, and what people like watching. And this intersection will be different for different creators, almost by definition. I learned this from listening to Naval Ravikant, although I think it might actually be a variation of the Japanese philosophy of ikigai. So feel free to look into these sources further if you're interested in this idea. I adopted the idea for YouTube, but the original is much more general and can be applied to pretty much any industry. The idea is that you should pick an endeavor that falls in the intersection of what you love doing, what you are good at, and what people are willing to pay you for. Now, if someone is exclusively motivated by money, they'll tend to ignore what they love doing. They'll push hard on what they are good at and what they'll get paid for, and that is one way that you could get yourself into a rat race. If you're just grinding it out and hustling, then you're not getting anything intrinsic out of the experience. And that's a problem not because of some romantic notion of this "you must do what you love" cliche. The reason is much more practical. Exclusive outcome orientation is a problem because it's a competitive disadvantage. If you're good at something but hate it, someone else who is also good at it but love it will outdo you. The trick is therefore to be ambitious enough to follow your passion, but never be so idealistic as to lose sight of what you're good at and what people will pay for. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. On average, it takes a lot of time and countless trial and error, and success isn't guaranteed. For example, I'm still iterating to find my sweet spot in the intersection between these three circles regarding my own effort on YouTube. My channel hasn't made enough revenue to cover what I've spent since I quit my job, so I'm still in the red so far. And it remains to be seen whether it'll work out before I run out of savings. I am ready, though, to take my resume back to the job market if it doesn't work out. And I'd probably keep making content on the side and try again once I have enough savings. Because I remember what it was like to push myself to do only what people are paying me for when I worked as a corporate consultant for a few years. Now, I'm not saying all jobs are bad, but that particular one just wasn't for me. It was a grind and created a lot of unnecessary human misery. So I think it's worth it to take some time to figure out a way to avoid that, even if it takes a long time. Especially when I know that it's possible to avoid the rat race, as I've seen people succeeding at it. And even in something as competitive as Chinese streaming industry, there are examples of people who have figured out ways to navigate it while maintaining their sanity and passion. I'm not talking about the sort of get-rich-quick stories that streaming agencies often use for recruitment. I'm talking about stories like this one, where a streamer figures out a path over time to create useful products and services and uses content as a way to find the people that can benefit from them. Now, this is not a report of someone who's becoming insanely rich, but maybe that's not the point of their journey. And their journey is still ongoing, so who knows where it will end up. And the point is that it looks like they are enjoying their journey so much that it's already fulfilling, regardless of its destination. Now, I want to acknowledge the possibility that some industries can be so toxic that the only way to compete is to rat race, and one might rarely have to switch industry to get out of it. I'm not saying that it's easy to find a sustainable and meaningful career. I'm not saying everyone will succeed at it for sure. I'm not trying to dole out baseless motivation here. As you may have noticed, a lot of the topics I cover are quite depressing. At some point, we all need to connect with reality, and reality can be unforgiving. These haunting footage of rows of street streamers is one manifestation of that stark fact. But it is precisely because the consequences of succumbing to the rat race are so dire that it is important to not give up on looking for sane and meaningful ways to navigate it. So I hope that the story of the homeless streamers did not make you jaded. I hope it instead serves you as a reminder to tread mindfully on your journey to find meaningful work, so that there may be a source of sanity, at least from your corner of the universe. The world seems to need that right now, so thank you for your efforts and best of luck.